do this whole blockchain sharding talk. I probably butchered your name. Can you say it for me?
Cheng Wang.
I didn't butcher the name. I probably just can't hear how I butchered the name is actually the way to say it. I could Jackie Chan. Okay. So we are going to be talking about blockchain sharding here. So if you're out there and you're interested in blockchain sharding, what it is it a buzzword? Is it more than a buzzword? Is Cheng a buzzword? All the answers to all these questions is going to be revealed. So go ahead and come on in, take a seat. I'm going to pass this off. So why don't we let's give Cheng a big hand.
Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, so first a little bit about my background. My academic background is from number theory and distributed computing. And then I joined the crypto space. My focus right now is a sharding project. It's called Alephium. We are trying to deliver decentralized and lightweight scalable blockchain with very fast cross-shard transactions. So in this talk, I'm going to first give a short overview about the existing research has been done by other projects, for example, Ethereum 2.0 and also some other similar projects with a highlight on the problems. And then I'm going to show you how Alephium, our project, is trying to solve it, resolving all the open problems in the field. So here is a single blockchain. Let's say it's Bitcoin or Ethereum, and we want to improve the transaction throughput. Probably all of you have heard about the scalability trilemma. It says that if we want to scale the blockchain, we need to sacrifice one of the three dimensions to some extent. So actually, if we look at a bit deeper, there are much more things we need to, or much more dimensions we need to consider and trade off for blockchain. So here is a more academic model to analysis blockchain. So we usually say blockchain is a state machine replication system. For state machine replication, it has three parts: data, execution, and consensus. So data part, it has quite a lot of constraints. We need some assumptions about network bandwidth, and also network topology is important. Is a P2P or is a little bit more centralized with different type of nodes. And then it's about the execution. So in blockchain, the execution is first you have the state tree. In Bitcoin is the UTXO set. In Ethereum is the word tree. And so here there are some limitations or bottlenecks. First is the I/O bottleneck. Then the second part is the executing model. You assume that all the commands are executed sequentially, or you want to support the parallelized execution of commands. The third part is about the consensus. Consensus, we need to model to first assumption, give assumption about networks. Some of the projects assume is a synchronous network. Some of the projects assume is a partial asynchronous, even asynchronously. And also security model, we assume majority honest money or majority honest hash power or etc. So the last most important part is for consensus we have the liveness and the safety trade-off. We cannot get both. We have to do a trade-off here. So actually scaling blockchain is a very complicated topic. We have seen a lot of different proposals. Usually when they say we can achieve 1 million TPS, they did not tell you some of the dimensions actually or some of the assumptions actually sacrificed a lot. So here is some methods to scaling blockchain. We first have the centralized exchange. So it definitely could improve the transaction throughput a lot, but the security model is sacrificed, right? And also large blocks. Large blocks could help a little bit for example, to scale Bitcoin, but the sacrifice is like the network assumption, the network bandwidth, also network. You wanted to assume it to be a synchronous network or it's a partial synchronous network. It will affect the delay. And also there are some methods I will not go through it. But sharding is still considered to be the one of the most promising way to scale blockchain. Why it is like this? Because sharding is the way to scale blockchain by parallelize data execution and the consensus in the same time. The subtext is we want to achieve this by very few by sacrificing very few the other stuff. For example, network assumption. For example, the security model, we want to keep it the same. If we want to scale blockchain, we want to make it still decentralized. We want to assume that it's still correct with honest, majority honest hash power, something like this. So sharding has been researched and investigated for quite a few years. We have all almost all people in the field must have heard it and also noticed that the progress is not very well, especially Ethereum 2.0 got delayed quite a lot of years. So here I'm going to give a short review of the popular methods that is behind the Ethereum 2.0 and also some other similar projects, and discuss about the problems. So here is a very simplified picture to demonstrate the idea of sharding. So basically, it's like we in Bitcoin Ethereum we have just one blockchain, and here we have a number of blockchains, and the miners, they don't focus on one chain, but instead they focus on all of the chains. The problem here is the miners are distributed to different shards, then the security is decreased for each shard. So the idea to solve the popular method to solve this is using POAs and validated sampling. The basic idea is like we have a big chain, we maintain a set of validators, and then we use a randomized algorithm to distribute these validators to different shards. So here comes the first assumption of this approach. The assumption is basically like this: we have a large set of validators, and we assume that the a very high rate of the nodes actually are honest. It's not just majority assumption anymore. Actually, if you want to assume that it's pretty safe for each shard, you need to assume that around 70% or even 80% of the validators are honest. Of course, it depends on the size of the validators. Another thing is, if the size is not big enough, actually is pretty insecure. If you, in the beginning when you start the project, if you only have 200 validators, actually you can basically say it can never be secure. So I will not show you the proofs, but basically this is one of the assumption, and actually this assumption cannot hold in short term and also in long term, because staking service will become a thing. A lot of users, they don't want to run a node by themselves. They will delegate the staking to a staking service, and this will make the assumption also questionable. There's another even critical security issue with this is something called adaptive adversary. It means when you distribute the validators randomly to different shards, actually once the validators they are assigned to a shard, then you can try to bribe the validators in this shard to make an attack. This is very doable actually. If you give incentivization incentives to the validators, by using, for example, a smart contract, you can automate this process. It's very like in practice, it's very doable. Here is a very simple example. If you have 100 shards and 50% of the tokens are staked, actually for each shard you only need to have 0.5% staking to attack it. So this is also a problem. Another problem is about shuffling, because as we say that we need to distribute the validators to randomly to the nodes. And after Apple, because of the security issues, we need to reshuffle it to make sure that the validators are not in the same shard. Okay. So the problem is shuffling actually has quite some overhead, because when you switch from one shard to another shard, you need to sync the states of the new shard, right? So this means you need to download this. If you only download the latest state of Bitcoin, you need to download like several gigabits. This will take quite a lot of time, given depends on the network assumption. So here the problem is if we try to shuffle it too frequently, then the overhead is too high, right? If we shuffle it too like not very frequently, then the security is an issue, because the validators are kind of static for like half a day or for 1 day. Then you can basically, if you want to attack it, you can take some action in just 1 day, right? There are some ways to ease this problem. One of the solution is to use stateless clients. Stateless clients is a good way to solve this, but the problem is stateless clients is not very practical for the moment. For Bitcoin, there are a lot of researches, but still it's not practical. And for Ethereum, it will be even more tricky, because the smart contract is more complicated. So right now, Ethereum is doing some research using Merkle tree proofs for this, but they are quite a bit overheard, because the Merkle tree actually the depth is pretty high. So whether we can have practical stateless clients in the near future is also open problem. So let's assume on the previous run, the validator run sampling is acceptable. Then let's say we want to do transaction between the shards. How can we do it? So in this model, in the existing approach, people usually use the so-called two-phase commit protocol. Basically, it's like Alice in shard A first. If she want to transfer money to Bob in shard B, it first need to create a receipt. So here she first create a transaction to say that I want to debit this amount of token, this amount of money, and I want to send it to Bob in shard B. Once this transaction is got committed into shard A, then in shard B, Bob could use a proof of the receipt to claim the money. So in this way, it has to at least 2 steps or 2 transactions used. But in practice, actually, is even more complicated, because the gas fee stuff and also security issues. Here, I only talk about one of the issues is about the dependencies of the transactions. Because right now in shard B, the transaction of Bob actually depends on the transaction of Alex in shard A. So this will make because each shard actually could have forks. So then the forks will have complicated dependencies because of cross-shard transactions, and we need to take care of this. If we have like 1,024 shards, the dependency graph could be very chaotic. It will be very hard to resolve the correct dependencies. There are some ways to to solve this, but not perfect. The first way is we try to arrange the shards in a directed acyclic graph. For example, in a tree, then whenever you receive something, you don't only check the data of your shard, you also check the data in your neighborhood shard. Then in this way, you can validate actually the cross-shard transaction. Both sides is correct. So this method is the first is proposed by Vlad, but it has some issues as well. Because if you have let's say if you have a transaction from A to B and to C, then basically C cannot validate the original transaction from A, because A is not a neighborhood of C anymore. Yeah, so here is it kind of solves some more problem, but it does not solve it completely. And the second is like you just don't handle it. Depends on the finality algorithm. Some of the system can like claim that they can never have forks, but POS, personally, I'm a bit skeptical about it. Besides this, we still have two very critical issues with sharding. So the first issue, both of the issues are also related with the dependencies. The first issue is state validity. So it means if something bad happened in one shard, it's very hard for the validators in another shard to notice this. There are some ways to solve this problem. The first one is called Fisherman by POC dot. So basically, it's like you have another type of nodes. You try to monitor the network to check if there's something weird happened in the state, and then once they found it, they try to punish it. But this has some issues because it will introduce some delays into it, and also still there are small some timing window you can take advantage of. The perfect way to solve this is using ZK proofs to prove that something actually happened in that shard. It's a bit like the one I said before, stateless clients. But ZKB, as I said before, ZKB for state validity is also not practical. It's, another problem is data availability. So in this architecture of Ethereum 2.0 or Neo-chain or other similar sharding methods, they always have a main chain. So the main chain, it will not download the other blocks from the other shards. It will only download the block head of the shard. So in this case, the validators actually they can CRUD for a shard and produce one block, but they only disclose the block head to the big chain. So big chain will commit it, but actually the validators they never disclose the full block. This will make the block not available. It basically can make the system hot. Yeah, so we have seen quite a lot of open problems in the current approach. I call this approach as POS plus validator sampling method. Some people call it as commit-based protocol or approach. So what is the issue of this approach if you want to describe it in one sentence? So basically it's transferring from the don't trust verify approach to the don't verify trust approach. So in Bitcoin or Ethereum we download all the blocks and we do the validation, and if something weird then we don't just reject the block. But in this new POS plus validator sampling approach, it's not like this anymore. You have to trust the validators. You have to trust also the assumption that in each shard actually no more than 1/3 of the validators are malicious, and then you trust what they verify for you. So in the end, each shard actually is a is a light node or is stateless node. But we actually, even now today, I don't think like we have practical, mature enough light node that you can have very high security like a full node. So I think this I'm not saying that this approach is totally wrong, but it's still like in the research progress, and many open problems need to be solved. So now I would like to show you how we are going to do this to do sharding in Alephium. So we proposed a new algorithm is called a block flow. That's our sharding approach. So basically, there are several points I want to highlight first. So first, we still following the don't trust verify approach. I think this is critical and important to keep a high security. The second thing is we use POW and the UTXO model. Actually, this gives us a very lightweight design. I will explain later. The third point is in our system, the cross-shard transaction just need one step. As I said, that in the existing research proposal is always two-step commit protocol. It will affect the user experience. We have a complete solution for sharding. It's not like research in progress. We are developing this for quite a long time, and we have an alpha system. So it's kind of we have a proof of concept already. Yeah. Now let's show you how we do it. So first we use UTXO model. We first divide all the addresses randomly into G groups. In this way, the transactions, because transaction could happen between any two of the groups, right? So there are G times G possible types of transactions. For example, in the left graph, we have 9 types of transactions from A to B, A to C, A to A, etc. We build a blockchain for each one of these types. So in total, we have G times G chain, right? So what's the beautiful thing about this this kind of decomposition? So the first good thing is, if you want to do a transaction from group B to group A, we just prepare the transaction just like what we do for Bitcoin. And we commit it to the chain corresponding to the edge from B to A, right? Then it's done. We don't need to have 2 steps. The second thing is about, so now for group B, it does not need to download the transactions between A to C and C to A, right? Because that's not relevant for group B. And so in this way, the amount of data a single node need to save is reduced to around 1 of G. But actually, the main challenge is the data dependencies between shards, and with this, it's very hard to reach consensus. You can consider it as like a forked system. So we propose a very specific algorithm called block flow to resolve the forks and to reach a consensus. I'm not going to go to details. Here is a very conceptual description. So basically, it's every new block, it will select very spatial hashes as the dependencies, following very specific rules, so that guarantee that the first thing is guarantee that there's no kind of how to say invalid dependencies, because for example, if one transaction depends on 2 forks of another shard, this is invalid. So we basically should like forbid this kind of dependencies. And then the second thing is like we should make sure that this kind of dependency selection is efficient enough. Because otherwise we can simply choose the latest hash of all the other shards. But this is not efficient, and it also has other drawbacks. Okay, so once we have this specific dependencies data structure, each new block actually could determine a unique flow of blocks. It's like a net, as you can see in the left graph, is like a network flow of blocks, right? So each new blocks using these dependencies to depend a unique flow of blocks. And then we simply choose the best flow based on the POW proof of work weight. So now for the nodes, they need to validate the dependencies and also transactions. The dependencies validation is something new compared to Bitcoin or Ethereum. So what is the cost? The cost is, so first we need to take time to compute, use some algorithm to compute the dependencies data structure. The calculation could be very fast heuristic in most cases. And validation is quick. It's much faster than calculation is. Like even I remember it's 2 seconds for G equals 32. Anyway, it's very 2 milliseconds. Anyway, it's very fast. And also we need to have more space to stop these dependencies. Basically, it's several hashes, and actually we can move this to the block body and just include them in the Merkle tree, and then for the light clients, it's not a big deal, and for the full node, this G dependencies is quite negligible. So, in case that if you are not very familiar with the technical details of sharding, so here I want to convince you, like conceptually, why this approach could work. So the first way to look at it is this method is actually a shift from state machine replication to state class replication. State machine replication is just a single blockchain, and here is like we first decompose the ledger to be stored in a small cluster, and then we replicate this cluster, and the size of the cluster will increase from very small to large gradually. This makes totally sense because when the market cap of the blockchain is very small, actually we don't need to shard it quite a lot, right? And then later, when the adoption increases and the market cap increases and the hash rate increases, then we can increase the size of the cluster. And actually, in our algorithm or architecture, it's very easy to increase the size of the cluster. It's not that hard. It could be very dynamic. And the last point is because it's a replication, so it is still follows the don't trust but verify approach. So we don't have all the problems from the POS plus validated sampling method. We don't need to trust validators. We only trust ourselves. And also in some cases you can even, but this is optional, you can even trust your friends. You can connect to your friends to form a for ledger. I think this is much more like acceptable than you trust the random validators. I mean, but this is optional. You can still run very small clusters, because in the early days when market cap is very low, the cluster is like you can even hold it with one node if your computer is powerful enough, or you can decompose it to run like several lights, very cheap nodes in Amazon. It's fine. Another way to look at this approach is we can analogy this to the computing model. We all know that the computing model evolved from sequential computing to concurrent computing, basically multi-threading, and then distributed computing. You have a set of computers. Each computer could do concurrent work, concurrent computing. So in blockchain, actually, we have the single blockchain, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then we have some proposed DAG-based blockchain. But actually, most of the DAG projects are not designed properly. And BlockFlow is, you can see, is a distributed DAG blockchain. So it's very much like the distributed computing evolution. And this is also give us, we kind of learn from history, give us confidence. That's why it makes sense. Yeah, that's all. And if you are interested in more about details, you can go to visit our website or follow me in Twitter, ask me questions later. And tomorrow I have another talk about how to reduce the energy consumption of proof of work. So if you are interested, please come to have a look and ask me questions. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Cheng. We don't have time for questions, but will you be able to take questions off stage over here? Yeah, so he's going to be over here. If you would like to ask him some questions, we're going to get set up for our next talk, which is Monero Bitcoin atomic swaps. That's a big buzzword. Everybody likes to say atomic swaps. So we're going to get that set up. We're going to be back here in a couple of minutes. Yeah, stuff was going down, huh? Oh, pretty interesting. I mean, it can't be C3 without at least one something, all right?